The book Wild turned author Cheryl Strayed into a celebrity, chronicling her 1,100-mile journey along the Pacific Crest Trail. Then, the book was turned into an Oscar-nominated film starring Reese Witherspoon.
If your nerve deny you, go above your nerve. Emily Dickinson and Cheryl Strayed.
In the years since, she's taken on the role of advice columnist Dear Sugar for an online publication and another bestseller, Tiny Beautiful Things.
I was so worried when I first started writing the column, like, it's gonna get lost on the internet. And in fact, people were so hungry for that kind of connection and that kind of sincerity.
Every bit of advice that Cheryl gave also came with a piece of herself as she opened up about her own life and experiences.
The things that really formed me and shaped me that end up in my advice are a few very central facts. My mother died young of cancer at 45. I was estranged from my father, who was abusive. I grew up poor in a rural environment, and I got married and divorced young.
And those are the parts of Cheryl's life she used to help create the main character, Claire, in the new Hulu series adapted from her book, Tiny Beautiful Things.
Dear Sugar, I'm a messed up woman.
We didn't want our main character to be like, and then she published Wild, and then Reese Witherspoon adapted the film of her book. You know, I mean, like, we needed to have a fictional present day character, and that's what we did. So it's one part memoir, one part fictional creation, really.
But before you binge it, Cheryl is sharing what we can all learn from Tiny Beautiful Things. Starting with the power of story.
I do think that we are transformed by artists telling the truths about what it means to be human, by way of telling the truth about what it means to be them or the characters that they create.
Being able to connect to someone else, whether they're real or fictional, can have an everlasting impact.
And so when I see, like, that young woman talking to her mom about how she's going to die soon of cancer, I'm not just seeing myself. I'm not just remembering my grief. I'm seeing all the many, many people throughout all time who have lost somebody who's essential to them.
And that power of connection is what makes us feel we aren't alone.
In my mind, when I talk about the book and the show, is that it really is so much about that hunger for us to connect and be vulnerable.
By telling her story, she realized how many others needed help telling theirs as well.
I've met so many people who have made changes because of the column they read, or who wrote the letters to me.
And in life's worst moments, Cheryl says we can actually find strength in the power of grief.
Grief can stay with you, but will stay with you all of your life. But it can be something that you turn into not just the worst thing that happened to you, but in some ways the most beautiful thing too. At root, at core, at the burning heart of that deepest suffering that grief can be, is really true love. Love. My mother died 32 years ago this month, and that's 10 years longer than she was alive in my life. What amazes me beyond all words is how much I actually still love her. And that's my grief. And that burden of your suffering can become the source of your greatest strength in so many ways.
All the tiny beautiful things are at the top of the list.